Since Honkai Star Rail was launched in 2023, the differences between the MCs of Honkai Star Rail and the MCs of Genshin Impact couldn't have become more apparent, and the divide in the fandoms about which MC was better became quite a heated topic. So let's take a look at the MCs themselves, the stories they bring to life, and decide once and for all who the better MC is. Before we jump into discussing the MCs themselves in detail, we should discuss what the point of an MC is in games like Honkai Star Rail and Genshin. In general, these MCs are meant to be more or less self-inserts. The point of these characters is for the player to view the world through their eyes and very much feel like the protagonist of the story. That being said, these characters differ from true player characters. Now, what do I mean by this? Using Elden Ring as an example, you can customize everything about your characters from how they look to how they level. In the end, the only real thing outside your control is the objective of playing the game, which is to become the Elden Lord. Of course, even within this objective, there are many endings and many ways you can choose to fulfill this objective. In this sense, while both Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail are RPG-style games, they don't allow the player to have full control over the MC and their motivations. This is in large part because the stories of Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail wouldn't work if the player had full autonomy over the story. The traveler has to go searching for their sibling because if they didn't, why would they travel to that? The traveler has to get involved with the problems of each nation because otherwise we wouldn't get a deeper understanding of the world. The Trailblazer, I would argue, has a bit more freedom simply because they were, well, just born. Their motivations are still evolving, and given they've been taken in by the Astral Express crew, it makes sense that the Trailblazer would sorta just follow along with them. But in the end, even the Trailblazer is confined by the story they are in. They have a designated part to play, just as the Traveler does. However, even people who play and love Genshin can agree that the Traveler is not the reason they play. I think very few people actively enjoy the Traveler. This isn't to say that the Traveler is disliked, more or less just forgotten. While I've seen fanfic and fan art of the Travelers in general, especially in fanfic, it seems like they're written, again, more or less just as a placeholder for the reader, or us as the players. While I'm still just a baby Honkai Star Rail player, that's not the sense I get from the fandom. Many people have headcanons about the Trailblazer of Honkai Star Rail, and they seem to have more fun with the characters in general. So, what's the big difference? Well, first off, let's look at the MCs in a bit more depth, and then maybe we can come back and answer this question. Starting with the Travelers, they are your traditional plain JRPG-style protagonists. The Travelers have a story that revolves around finding their sibling, and despite this, whether you picked Lumine or Aether, the Traveler very much falls into what most would consider a Paragon-type hero. The Traveler is the honorary knight. The Traveler is the savior of Liyue. Somehow, the Traveler is both a well-respected captain of the Watatsumi Resistance and a close friend of the Shogunate. And the list goes on and on. Essentially, the Traveler always makes the good decision, the morally correct decision, to help whatever people they're in contact with at any given moment, regardless of whether or not it helps their main objective of finding their sibling. This isn't bad, exactly. We are what is demanded of us from the story, as I would argue that Genshin's story is about far more than the Traveler. In fact, I'd argue whether you're playing as Aether or Lumine doesn't really matter. Instead, what becomes obvious is the fact that all Lumine and Aether are is the perspective through which we as the players experience Genshin. Again, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. The story of Genshin is one I personally enjoy very much, despite my complaints of narrative pacing throughout much of the Archon quests. But it's easy to grow bored with these kinds of main characters. Our choices in dialogue are often pretty standard, and there's very little flair added in for personality. At the end of the day, sometimes Aether and Lumine as characters just feel boring. I would argue the purpose of Aether and Lumine is to be relatively forgettable from a player's perspective, so that we can focus more on the happenings of Teyvat. To this end, I think this type of MC is perfect for this kind of story. Moreover, there are instances where it matters that you're playing the Traveler. The quests we go on with Dainsleif often revolve around us and our sibling, and that's a point that the MCs can sorta take on a life of their own. But even still, Aether and Lumine have such similar personalities if you're playing them as the Traveler, and it makes you feel like your choices just don't matter. There are subtle differences between the characters. Most would agree that Lumine is more brash and bold, while Aether is more calm and reserved. In fact, this is reflected in their playstyle, Aether leaning a bit more towards defense, while Lumine leans a bit more towards attack. But generally, the characters just feel flat. I'd argue Paimon as a character has more depth than the Traveler, and it can make it feel sort of jarring when characters in the game react so positively to us as the Traveler, because honestly, we as the players don't feel that attached to Aether or Lumine, and we don't feel like they've done anything to deserve all this praise outside of helping out. Moving on to Honkai Star Rail, I'll admit this is coming from the perspective of someone who just started playing the game. But whether you're playing as Stell or Kalis, you are the Trailblazer, the Nameless. And that in and of itself lends more mystery from a player perspective. You watch as the Trailblazer is born, a Stellaron forcibly shoved into your body, but your memories are non-existent. Why was Herta keeping your body on the space station? Why do the Eons gaze upon you? Why can you resonate with so many paths? Can you hear the voices of the Stellaron simply because there is one in your body? Why can you house a Stellaron? Why is Kafka and her group so interested in you? Specifically, why is Kafka so interested in you? All of these questions are ones we can ask ourselves as the player, but they alone can't make the Trailblazer worth playing. They set up the Trailblazer with much more interest, but the Trailblazer themselves still has to capture our attention. And they do. The Trailblazer feels like they have so much more personality than what I came to expect coming from Genshin to Honkai Star Rail. The scene on Yarleo, or however they pronounce it in the game, the ice planet, everybody knows what I'm talking about. When we're alone in our hotel room, it'd be super easy to just have the Trailblazer go to sleep. But you have actual choices on what you can do, one of which is to climb into a wardrobe and jump out. It's funny and ridiculous and done for absolutely no good reason. It shows off the character's personality, and moreover, it gives you as the player more control. Do you want the Trailblazer to be more serious? Then choose the more serious option. In Honkai Star Rail, the dialogue options feel much more diverse. There's what I'd consider a standard option, but often there are two other options of varying levels of silliness. As the Honkai Star Rail MC, you don't have to play as the Paragon type hero. You can play as someone with different motivations, and perhaps more importantly, you have people react to the choices you've made. I can't tell you how many times March has gotten pissy with me for the responses I've given, or the fact that I can just feel the side-eye coming from Don Hung and Welch for a lot of the things I've said and done during missions. In essence, the Trailblazer doesn't feel flat. Their character feels alive and dynamic, and perhaps even more importantly, you as the player feel like you have real control over how that personality is expressed and shown throughout the game. The character interactions don't feel forced. They feel genuine because there's different responses to your actions. While yes, there is one path that the story is going to follow, you still have an opportunity to express your personality as it unfolds, and that makes the game interesting and fun. So, in short, is the Trailblazer the better MC? I would say that the answer is yeah. As much as I love Genshin, I do feel like the Trailblazer is a much more compelling character to play as. While Genshin has many characters that keep me interested and engaged in the story, the Traveler is just not one of them. Versus the Honkai Star Rail, where currently I'm not really interested in any of the characters, but the Trailblazer keeps me locked in for the game. I hope you guys found this video interesting, and while right now most of my content is Genshin focused, I want to start making more Honkai Star Rail content. So engaging with this, leaving a like, comment, subscribing, all of that will tell me whether or not I should keep going in this direction. Normally I end all my videos with "May the wind bless your travels," but considering this is a Honkai Star Rail video, at least in part, I don't really know what I should end it off with. If you have a suggestion, leave it down below. New videos every Friday, and with that, I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye!